In 2025, President Trump's return to the White House has triggered a seismic shift in global economic relations, sending shockwaves through international markets and diplomatic circles alike. The world is watching as the United States, once the architect of global cooperation, now pivots sharply inward. Trump's aggressive America First strategy is not just a slogan, it's a fundamental reordering of how the U.S. engages with the world, redefining alliances and upending the rules of global trade. This approach goes far beyond traditional protectionism. It's a form of economic warfare, targeting not only traditional rivals like China, but also long-standing allies such as Japan, South Korea, and the European Union. The message is clear: no one is exempt from America's new demands. The U.S. now insists that its allies subsidize American industry and relocate manufacturing to U.S. soil, threatening steep tariffs and trade barriers for those who refuse. This hardline stance is reshaping supply chains and forcing companies to reconsider where and how they do business. Economists and policy experts have called this a neo-colonial protection racket, an attempt to reverse decades of U.S. deindustrialization and maintain American dominance, especially as the BRICS bloc gains influence and challenges the old order. The result? Allies are now forced to pay a premium for access to the lucrative U.S. market, upending decades of mutually beneficial agreements and creating new tensions in boardrooms and government offices around the world. Instead of fostering loyalty, this approach breeds resentment and mistrust. Longtime partners are beginning to question the reliability of the U.S., seeking alternatives and forging new alliances that exclude American influence. The alliance structure that underpinned U.S. power since World War II is now at risk of unraveling. The global landscape is being redrawn not through cooperation, but through coercion and confrontation. As trade routes shift and new partnerships form, America faces the real danger of becoming more isolated than ever before, its influence diminished, its alliances fraying, and its future on the world stage uncertain. No country feels this pressure more than Japan, a nation that has long prided itself on its economic resilience and diplomatic alliances. Yet today, Japan finds itself at the center of a storm, facing demands that threaten the very foundation of its prosperity and autonomy. Now, Japan is bound by a trade deal that many experts and officials describe as outright coercive, a stark departure from the spirit of partnership that once defined U.S.-Japan relations. Under the agreement, Japan is compelled to invest a staggering $550 billion in the United States by 2029. If it fails, it faces punishing tariffs of 15% to 25% on its most vital exports, including cars and electronics, industries that are the backbone of Japan's economy and global reputation. What's more, the U.S. government dictates not only the amount, but also the direction of these investments, controlling how and where Japan's money is spent. In return, the U.S. claims up to 90% of the cash flows generated by these projects, leaving Japan with little to show for its massive outlay. Japan is explicitly barred from any form of retaliation. If it dares to push back or refuse, it faces the threat of even harsher tariffs and further economic isolation, effectively trapping it in a cycle of dependency. Japanese automakers, once global leaders, now face a stark and painful choice: either absorb crippling tariffs that could devastate their international competitiveness, or divert precious capital and resources to build factories in the U.S., a move that threatens the health of their domestic industry and workforce back home. For many in Japan, the deal is seen as nothing short of a national humiliation. Decades of close alliance and mutual trust have been reduced to a transactional demand for tribute, undermining Japan's sovereignty and pride. Japanese negotiators plead for relief, appealing to the shared history and values between the two nations. But so far, Washington has shown no sign of compromise, holding firm to its demands. The message is clear: in this new era of American power, loyalty and friendship count for little. Economic might and leverage now dictate the terms, leaving Japan to navigate an uncertain and deeply unequal partnership. The fallout in Japan was immediate. Shockwaves rippled through every corner of society, from the bustling streets of Tokyo to the quiet rural towns. The news dominated every television screen and newspaper headline as citizens struggled to process the scale of the crisis. Prime Minister Ishiba resigned amid a wave of national outrage, his government unable to withstand the mounting pressure. The resignation was not just a political event, it was a symbol of a nation's deep sense of betrayal and humiliation. Protests erupted across major cities, with citizens from all walks of life demanding their leaders take a stand against what they saw as US bullying. The streets filled with chants, banners, and a collective call for dignity. The deal was widely condemned as a capitulation, a humiliating surrender that struck at the heart of Japan's sovereignty and national pride. Many felt their leaders had failed to protect the country's interests. Business leaders, already reeling from the impact of harsh tariffs, now openly discussed pivoting toward China and the BRICS bloc as a survival strategy. For many, the US was no longer seen as a reliable partner. The ruling party fractured under the strain, with lawmakers bitterly divided over how to respond. Japan now faced a dangerous power vacuum, and its foreign policy was thrown into chaos. Attempts to renegotiate with Washington seemed futile. Every effort was met with resistance or indifference, leaving Japanese officials frustrated and isolated. Maintaining the status quo risked further public anger and deepening economic decline. The collapse of one of Asia's most stable governments was now a reality, a direct result of US strong-arm tactics that left Japan politically adrift and socially fractured. Trump's strategy, intended to subordinate an ally, may have done the opposite. Defying the alliance itself and leaving the future of US-Japan relations more uncertain than ever before. As US alliances fray, the BRICS group is rising as a powerful alternative. Expanded to include Egypt, Iran, Indonesia, and others, BRICS Plus now represents over half the world's population and 44% of global GDP. Their mission challenged the US-led financial system and build a multipolar order. BRICS nations are accelerating de-dollarization, using their own currencies and China's CIPS system to bypass US sanctions. They're divesting from US treasuries, directly undermining American financial power. Trump's administration is alarmed, but pressure only strengthens BRICS unity. Instead of fracturing, the bloc is galvanized, determined to build an alternative to what they see as a predatory system. The US response is fueling the very opposition it fears. India's experience shows how Trump's tactics are backfiring. After Trump doubled tariffs on Indian goods for buying Russian oil, India pivoted decisively toward BRICS. Prime Minister Modi resumed ties with China, reopening flights and exploring joint ventures in electric vehicles. India is also deepening partnerships with Russia and Brazil, coordinating responses to US tariffs. No longer hedging, India is now a BRICS protagonist, seeking autonomy from US dominance. The US policy has pushed the world's largest democracy closer to its main rivals, China and Russia. By treating India as an adversary, Washington has strengthened the very bloc it sought to contain. For many in the global south, BRICS now offers a more appealing alternative to US hegemony. Japan faces a stark choice: remain tethered to the US or pivot toward Asia and BRICS. Decades of pro-US policy are being challenged by economic pain inflicted by Trump's tariffs. Japan's business leaders, watching their competitiveness erode, now see integration with BRICS and Asia as a lifeline. This has created a rift between political leaders clinging to the US alliance and CEOs seeking new markets. The US is seen as increasingly unreliable, while BRICS offers stability and growth. The longer US pressure continues, the stronger the argument for diversification becomes. Japan's eastward glance is cautious, but growing more determined with each day of economic hardship. The country's internal conflict mirrors the global shift toward a new economic order. Trump's America First strategy is eroding US influence across Asia. South Korea faces similar coercion, with steep tariffs and forced investments fueling resentment. In Southeast Asia, a majority now prefer China over the US as a partner, a historic shift. China, through initiatives like Belt and Road, is deepening regional ties, while the US extracts tribute from allies. The BRICS expansion cements this alternative bloc, while the US is seen as disruptive. Short-term US gains come at the cost of long-term strategic influence. America is winning tariff battles but losing the war for leadership in the world's most dynamic region. The cumulative effect is the rapid unraveling of the post-Cold War order. Japan faces stagnation if it stays with the US, or risk and opportunity if it pivots to BRICS. The US, by alienating allies, risks strategic isolation and lacks the workforce to sustain its reindustrialization push. International trade is fragmenting into competing blocs and currencies, with BRICS's financial architecture challenging US hegemony. The dollar's dominance is no longer assured. the world is hedging against American unilateralism. Trump's zero-sum tactics are accelerating the rise of a multipolar world. The old order is dying, and a new one, born of economic conflict, is struggling to emerge.